Good morning, kids. In this lecture, we will discuss about the introduction to independent system operator. In the last video lecture, we have discussed about the different restructuring models of power system. We have gone through the pool co-model. We have gone through bilateral contracts model. And we have also discussed about hybrid model. And we have seen the role of ISO, independent system operator, in all of these models. Now, in this lecture, we will see in detail about the role of independent system operator in all of these things, and also we'll discuss about the objectives of independent system operator, and we'll have a quick review about the principles of independent system operator, which are laid down by Federal Electricity Regulatory Commission of USA, which is a standard body in emanating the rules and regulations regarding this restructured power markets. Now, the contents, I will start with introduction to independent system operator, and I will move on to the objectives, and finally we'll have a quick review about the principles of ISO. Starting with the introduction of independent system operator, as we have already seen in the previous classes, the term independent system operator, this ISO, where I stands for independent, which is nothing but the name itself indicates it is an autonomous body from its key stakeholders of GENCOs, TRANSCOs and DISCOMs. And the system here refers to I refers to independent, which is nothing but your autonomous. S represents system. Here the system represented is the electricity transmission system. And O is nothing but the operator, the handler of all the operation services. So an autonomous body which carries out the operations pertaining to electricity transmission services. So that is your independent system operator. Now basically independent system operator is independent of the market participants. We have seen in the market participants in all of the different restructuring models, the common participants are the transmission owners, the TRANSCO, who predominantly control the electricity transmission services, the GENCOs, who generate the electricity or who sell the electricity, DISCOs, who buy the electricity, and finally the customers. So these are the predominant market participants, and ISO is independent of all these participants. And as we have already discussed, the basic purpose of an ISO is to ensure a fair and non-discriminatory allowance of access to the transmission lines. So he ensures a fair and non-discriminatory access to the transmission services. Besides, he also provides ancillary services that we have discussed in the previous lectures also. The different ancillary services are just like your frequency management, reactive power management, voltage booster. So all these types of ancillary services, they are provided by ISO. At the same time, not only providing this non-discriminatory access and offering ancillary services, the ISO also maintains a real-time operation of the system. So once he collects the bits, finalizes the bits, informs the GENCOs and DISCOMs. So on the day of delivery, he maintains a real-time operation. So he monitors the dispatch of electricity from the seller to buyer. At the same time, he also facilitates the reliability requirements. So he ensures that the system is reliable, it is not overloaded, and everybody gets the electricity as per the shortlisted bits. Having said this, so we will list out the objectives of independent system operator. So it is not just independent system operator is not about dispatching the generation or redispatching the generation. The fundamental concept of independent system operator is that you should maintain a reliable power system where the demand matches with the generation. So that is the biggest problem with the power system. If you know that we have seen in the last course of power system stability also, if you don't maintain the equilibrium between the generation and demand, because we all know that electricity is not a storable commodity, so if you don't maintain the equilibrium between generation and demand, then automatically the system loses its reliability. So that's fine. There must be always a balance between the generation and demand. If the demand is very high or the generation is very high, then automatically it will lead to catastrophes in the power system. And also, let us suppose if the demand is too low, you are supposed to decrease the generation. If the demand is too high, then you are supposed to increase the generation. This is to be done in order to ensure the reliability and optimize the transmission efficiency. And at the same time, you are supposed to monitor the condition of the transmission system. And 24/7, because if you exist in a hybrid pool, you are supposed to cater to the individual demands or the bilateral contracts also. So you should 24/7 continuously approve or deny requests for transmission services. And if any person asks you additional services, then you should maintain system integrity by acquiring resources which are necessary to remove any transmission violations. Let us suppose if there is a congestion happening in the transmission system, you are supposed to take necessary measures to overcome this congestion. And also, the fundamental concept of power system, you should maintain the system frequency at an acceptable level to retain the stability. So these are all the fundamental objectives of independent system operator. And based upon this, the Federal Electricity Regulatory Commission of USA, which we call as the predominant body, which provides us Federal Electricity Regulatory Commission. It is one of the oldest bodies which lays over the rules and regulations of electricity sector in USA. And this is one of the first countries which have gone through the regulation power system restructuring. So they have developed some principles for the independent system operator, how to act in these deregulated power markets. And they have maintained 14 principles. They have laid down 14 principles for the independent system operator. And we will have a quick review of these principles. The first and foremost thing is, I have highlighted the important points. We will have a quick look upon that. The independent system operator his governance must be structured in a fair and non-discriminatory manner. That is what we have been discussing. And also, in order to maintain fair and non-discriminatory thing, the FERC has mandated that ISO and its employees should have no financial interest in the economic performance of any power market participant, which means that none of the employees of ISO must own a GENCO or a TRANSCO or a DISCO. And an ISO should provide open access to the transmission system. And all services which are there under control at non-packaged rates, at non-pancaked rates, they must be provided to all the operators, to all the participants of the markets in a very non-discriminatory manner, and to all the eligible users, in a non-discriminatory manner. And one more, as we have discussed in the last class, the primary responsibility is ensuring short-term reliability of grid operations. That's what I have been telling you. It is about balancing generation and demand. And after that, apart from this, in whatever the area which you are controlling, the ISO must have complete control over the operation of interconnected transmission facilities, because they must provide access to the transmission services. Apart from that, if there are any constraints in the system regarding the congestion or transmission capability or regarding the demand over demand, so you should identify the constraints in that particular system and you should relieve the system of those constraints, such that your efficiency of the power system will be promoted. And at the same time, let us suppose that the demand is very high, so high that the generation is not able to cater for that one. Or let us suppose there is an exigency where a generator has suddenly tripped off and you are supposed to provide demand. Then if some other person comes up and offers to provide you electricity, so in that case he must be given some sort of incentive. So an ISO should have appropriate incentives for efficient management and administration. So let us suppose if a person is operating very efficiently, you should provide some incentives such that it improves the morale of that particular entity. That job is to be taken up by ISO. And at the same time, an ISO, the transmission and ancillary services which it provides, basically the policies which govern these services, the provision of these services, it must promote the efficient use of and investment in all the three parts of power system: the generation, transmission, and utilization. So whatever the policies which you make as an ISO, it must promote competition, and it must also promote investment and efficient use of these sectors. And one more thing, let us suppose as a part of your basic work, an ISO basically allocates the transmission lines to different participants based upon the request. So this information must be made public on timely basis via an electronic information network. So nowadays everything is available on the internet. So whatever the decision which you are going to take regarding the access of these transmission lines, that should be made public. And at the same time, it should develop mechanisms to coordinate its activities with neighboring control areas. Let us suppose if you do have a very large area, you take USA, it is a very large area, nearly consists of nearly 50 states. So some states are basically part of one control area. You may have a number of control areas in one particular country. It depends upon your geographic and policy decisions. Like that, let us suppose there are different control areas: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if an ISO is operating in this region, he must have mechanisms and he must have policies such that he coordinates his activities with the neighboring control areas. And finally, see, if let us suppose if anybody complains about any of these things, you should have a proper alternative dispute resolution. We call it as ADR, alternative dispute resolution mechanism. It's a process where if anybody raises any disputes within the operating region of your system, they will be resolved in that particular moment. Okay. So these are the principles of ISO which have been laid down by the Federal Electricity Regulatory Commission. I hope that you have now understood what is the role of ISO. So now you are able to describe the role of independent system operator. You can list out the objectives of ISO, and I hope that you are able to at least list out the principles of ISO, the 11 principles which we have discussed so far. I hope that you can pen down at least a few of these principles of ISO, which you feel them as important ones. And regarding the questions, what is the basic purpose of an independent system operator? He basically ensures non-discriminatory access of the transmission system. And what are the principles? We do have 11 principles which I have listed now. You can go through them. Thank you.